We're going to be talking about how barbecue can change the world, lessons from the pit for business and for life.
All right, thank you very much, AMJ. Let's get started, shall we? And there we are. What is barbecue? Well, before I get to that question, let me just say this. Is there anything more foundational to human culture than sharing a meal with your family, your friends, your tribe? Is there anything more primal than cooking over fire? The answer, of course, is no. And I will tell you that barbecue brings those two elements together in wonderful and even transformative ways. So let's go back to the beginning so that we can get to that end. What is barbecue? Well, very simply, it's a cooking method, low and slow cooking over wood or charcoal fire, producing a smoky flavor and a tender meat. That's the definition. Let's see what it looks like in practice. You know, there are many, many regional styles to barbecue. They're all unique. They're very distinct. And you know what? They're all very good, or they would not have survived as a regional style. You know, we've got whole hog with a vinegary, thin sauce in North Carolina. In Tennessee, Memphis, we have a sticky, sweet red sauce on pork ribs. Cross the Mississippi to Kansas or Missouri, you get to Kansas City, and they invented a moment of awed silence, please. Burnt ends, the best bite in barbecue. And they're all about sticky red sauces slathered over everything, including beef and beef ribs. And of course, there's Texas, which probably has 5 distinct regional styles, but where they shine is brisket. And that is the Mount Everest of barbecue. And they don't slather sauces on it. They let the meat speak. They roast it. They slowly barbecue it over indirect post-oak smoke for 8, 12, 14 hours until it is a thing of wonder that you eat by itself. It doesn't need anything else. And just as there are many distinct styles of barbecue, there are many, many distinct cookers. The equipment varies immensely. For example, there's the traditional Texas offset. This looks to be about a 350-gallon, 250-gallon offset. They go up to 1,000 gallons and multiple layers of racks. You can put dozens of brisket on one of those. You get the fire in the firebox, the smoke and the heat go up through the cooking chamber, escape through the pipe. All you need is care of the fire and patience. Then there are ceramic cookers like the Big Green Egg or Kamado Joe, an egghead. Okay, well, I've got a large, an XL, and a Mini Max.
Oh, my Lord.
That sign says egghead, yeah. That's me. This is my backyard. This is my outdoor kitchen. I refer to it affectionately as the Temple of Manhood. But as excellent as those cookers are, you pay the price. Doesn't have a lot of square footage. Pellet smokers, who's got one of those? Traeger. These have become incredibly popular in the last 10 or 20 years. And what they do is they produce that indirect smoke through the chamber and up through the pipe, but they do it not using splits of post oak or another wood. They use pellets, and a computer drives them using an auger into a burn pit. The beauty of this is guys like me who don't have 18 hours to spend through the night smoking cigars and sipping bourbon, mind you, but I don't have that kind of time. I've got a day job. With this, you can plug it in and go to bed and have the brisket ready for lunch. Now, I have a pellet smoker. It's a Pitts and Spitz Maverick 2000. This is a smoker only in the sense that a Rolls Royce is a car. This thing is handmade in Houston, Texas. I won't tell you the story of how I talked my wife into it, but there it is. The beauty of this thing is, yes, I can smoke on it, but I can smoke a ton. If you want to do a dozen salmon smoked as Christmas gifts instead of sugar cookies, this is the animal that you want to use. How about 8 23-pound Packer briskets at one time? If you're going to a barbecue competition and you need to feed 2,000 people, that is the approved solution. But there are other styles like the Santa Maria where you vary the heat by raising or lowering the meat on a platform. And the Argentine asador, where you simply clamp your cuts of meat between two grids, put it downwind of the fire, and I've had food off of this. It looks primitive, but it is amazing. And that brings us to our first lesson from the pit. It is this. This is DEI done right. I happen to believe that DEI is a failed brand. Now, how can that be? Because diversity is good. Equity is good. Inclusion is good. But why is DEI, as we've experienced it, bad? I will tell you, because it's been forced upon us as a mandate when it needs to be a mindset. It needs to be a way of life. Nobody, in particular car dealers, likes being told what to do. But intrinsically, I think we all want to do the right thing. And that just has to be coaxed out of us. Barbecue has taught me that because all of those regional styles, I've tried them all, and I have incorporated them into my own barbecue game. I have used virtually every one of those cooking equipment, and I've taught on them. And they're amazing. And it makes my barbecue better because, like Claude Silver said yesterday in our first keynote, foster inclusivity. Do it organically. Do it because it is who you are. And it will be great. Now I want to tell you how barbecue is done. And I'm going to tell you a love story about brisket. Brisket begins its life as the largest muscle. There are actually two of them, like our pectoral muscles. They're the largest muscles on a cow, and they are the lowest. Cows walk on all fours. This is their chest. It bears 100% of the weight of the cow for its entire life. That is why it is tough, because it's strong. And the higher you go on an animal, be it a cow or a pig, the more tender the meat becomes because it's bearing less of the weight of the animal. Thus, you have the rich people living high on the hog, because that's where the most tender meat is. It's high on the hog and it's high on the cow. Brisket's at the bottom, but we're going to change all that. We're going to take a 23-pound brisket. It's called the Packer. It's two muscles. It's got the flat, and on top of it, a fattier portion called the point. And I'm going to take that thing, and while it is still cold, because it's easier to trim fat when it's cold, I'm going to trim that fat cap down to about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to excise a section of hard fat called the decal, even though that's not its name, between the point and the flat. And I'm going to trim off all of the skinny parts so that it looks like this. And you'll see that it's about yay thick along the perimeter. It's the rule of thumb. Cut off anything that is thinner than your thumb, and I typically do 2 fingers, because that thin stuff is going to get hard and burnt, and you're going to throw it out anyway. Then you're going to cover it with a rub. There are a lot of fancy schmancy rubs out there. The one I use, and the one most favored by the state of Texas, is called Dalmatian. It's black and white. It's salt and pepper. We're going to cover it up. We're going to put it on the smoker. This is my egg. It's going to be over indirect heat and wood smoke. I'm probably using, I can smell that, hickory. And then we're going to let that thing go for about 3 to 4 hours, and it's going to look like this. You're going to see the bark forming all over it, and it's going to look great, but it's still hard. And you're wondering, why does this thing apparently cook really fast in the beginning? Because it's going to rise, the internal temperature of the meat will rise 1 degree Fahrenheit per minute for about an hour and a half, every minute or two. And you're thinking, this thing will be cooked in 3 hours. And so the temperature keeps rising until it stops. And that's called the stall. This is a graphic representation. Temperature on the vertical axis, time on the horizontal. And you will see that when you start the smoke, the temperature goes up to here and it just flattens. It just stops. Brisket's hard because you're tempted at this point to buy a new thermometer, or open up the smoker and raise the temperature. What the heck is going wrong? And the answer is nothing's going wrong. It looks like nothing is happening, but in fact, everything is happening during the stall. The stall occurs because of something called evaporative cooling. As the fat renders, it becomes a liquid, and as the liquid evaporates, it cools the meat. It's like how we sweat in the summertime, evaporative cooling. And there comes a point where the forces of evaporative cooling and the BTUs coming from below balance each other out. They duke it out for 4 hours, maybe 5. Depends on your ambient humidity, temperature of the pit, and the size of the meat. You think that nothing is happening, but I'm telling you, everything changes while you're enduring the heat. This is what makes brisket wonderful, is the long period taking the heat, and at the end of it, the temperature is going to start climbing again. And at that moment, the temperature of the beef is exactly where it was when the stall began, but that piece of beef has been completely transformed. When it looked like nothing was happening, everything was happening. The fat was rendering, the connective tissue was hydrolyzing, the tough was becoming tender, the dry was becoming succulent. It was changed because it endured the heat. Now you can shorten that, I'm going to show you the trick, but this brings us to lesson number 2, and that is embrace the suck. Life sucks sometimes. Life is hard sometimes. But let's take a look at what Claude Silver was telling us yesterday morning. The hard road is generally the right road. There are no shortcuts in barbecue. You cannot cheat the meat. There are no shortcuts in life either. Leadership isn't tested in comfort. It is forged in crisis. This is what makes us better people. May you not be cursed with an easy life, because you will be shallow when you die. Embrace the suck. It's what's going to change you. I've learned nothing from success. I've become wise because of failures. You can shorten the stall by wrapping the brisket in butcher paper. I always put a couple dollops of Wagyu beef tallow in there. Oh yeah, that makes it really good. And a couple hours later, it's going to come out looking like this. You keep it in the butcher paper, you put it in a cooler with a blanket you don't care about, towel you don't care about, you let it rest at least 2 hours, and then you slice it like this, and it's magic. It's absolutely magic. It's wonderful stuff.
Yeah, you get me hungry.
I hope so. Now, why are you here? Why are you here? Maybe your boss told you had to come, but you came to this particular show. And all of us in this room have been to many, many different types of car-related trade shows and so on. But you chose to come to this one. You self-selected. If you remember that walk-up video, that little boy ringing the bell, Tyler's son Weston, and that lanyard said, "More than cars." That's our short code for love people more than you love cars. I believe you're all here today because you do. And you want to be validated in that belief by being surrounded by 648 other people who believe the same thing, so that you can draw strength from those numbers and courage from that company and go back and live that as a mindset and as a lifestyle and succeed. Which brings us to the third lesson from the pit. Who spends a week preparing a brisket, brining it, rinsing it, rubbing it, trimming it, smoking it, wrapping it, resting it, slicing it, serving it? Who does that? For people who don't even know who you are and will never remember your name and certainly never become a client of my company. Who does that? And the answer is, well, I do it. And I'm looking at some of my colleagues who do it with me. We do it because we love the people more than we love the barbecue. It's how we express our love. And that's lesson number 3. The most important person in the world is the one that you're serving. right now. 10 days ago, we were at a barbecue competition. I was told by the organizer, be prepared to feed 2,000 people. And we did not. We did not feed 2,000 people. We were not interested in feeding a population. We fed one very special person 2,000 times. That's what happens when you love people more than you love cars, or in my case, love people more than you love barbecue. And that brings us to the conclusion of my portion with a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas. To love is to will the good of another for the other's sake, not for what we get out of it, but for what you get out of it. This is about you, it's not about me. That's the definition of love. And with that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Troy Duhon, who demonstrates this as well as any dealer I've ever met, and frankly, better. And this is a car guy from a car family who loves cars. But more than that, he loves what he's allowed to do with what the car business has given him. Give it up for Mr. Troy Duhon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Premier Automotive.
All right. So who's in the car business? Raise your hand if you're in the car business. So let me tell you what my daddy, now I grew up, my dad was an alcoholic car guy who, my mother filed divorce. My daddy loved my mother. So his used car manager convinced him to go to church. My dad didn't go to a simple Catholic or Baptist church. They took my dad to a Pentecostal church. And he said, these people crazy. But my dad loved my mother. My daddy went and prayed. Overnight, miraculously, got off of alcohol, reconciled with my mother. So I didn't grow up in a divorced family. Then my daddy got out of the car business and became a Pentecostal preacher. So I want you to think about that for a second, because my dad always said, son, you're not in the car business, you're in the people business. So selling cars may be what I do, but that's not who I am. And I'm going to show you today who I am and why it's so important for you at your store, your community, wherever God has planted you, to change the world. And that's what we're going to talk about. Katrina hit August 29th, 2005. I had 5 dealerships at the time. I was 39 years old. I'd never seen a storm like this in my life. I've been through a lot of hurricanes. Never seen anything this big. I wasn't going to evacuate, and then I felt like, whoa, this is a huge storm. I evacuated. It pushed the water so far, it took out every store I had except one. I had 500 employees on a Friday. I had 200 employees on a Monday. And I began to cry because the banks start putting my loans in special assets. I wasn't prepared for this. I was making money. My daddy looked at me and he said, son, let me tell you something. You see that brick and mortar? That comes and goes. See those franchises that you represent? They come and go too. You go back and take care of your employees because they're the only ones going to determine whether or not you make it. From that moment, I started running a food bank with my church. The line was 1,200 cars long every day. I saw master mechanics serve people whose 2-story houses were completely underwater. I'm getting loan calling. I'm on my knees praying. I said, Lord, if you get me through this, I promise you the rest of my career will be to serve you. At that moment, I had 5 dealerships. Today, I have 39. And the reason I do, and the reason I think I'm successful, is because of what I do in the community. So that's me there. I take old dealerships, and I operate food banks. I feed 8,000 to 10,000 people a day. Today, they're not going to call and tell me how many cars we sold. They're going to say, boss, this is how many people we fed. And some other franchise dealers have come to me and come under my 501c, because if you can't get the food, you can't do it. So I don't serve barbecue, but I serve whatever they need. And when you look at those people in that food bank line, you ask yourself, what is the difference between me and them? Sometimes it's one decision that they made. So I don't judge people in that line. I never have, I never will. I don't discriminate. We have food banks in New Orleans, Kansas City, Monterey, California, Hawaii. We're about to open up in Escondido, California. And the beautiful thing about this is when I think I have a bad day, I just walk outside and I look at that food bank line. And I ask myself, what would happen if I stopped doing this? Where would these people go? So it gives me purpose. The second thing we do is we build orphanages. I have an adopted Chinese daughter. I call her my Cajun Asian. I love her. I told my other kids, y'all took 9 months. She took 6 years. You know I love her more. And her IQ is a little bit higher than y'all's. So when you adopt, you never think you could love a child that wasn't yours as much as the ones that were. That's not true. I love her as much, if not more, because I know that I took her out of China, where at that moment in time, it was a single parent rule, single child rule, which means that poor little girl would have ended up, God only knows where. She was left at the orphanage one day old, and I got her when she was 11 months old. When I saw the way they treated the orphans in China, I got nauseous. I couldn't believe that they would take babies and put them in dog pens. And I told my wife, I said, listen, we're gonna do something special. We're gonna do something big. And from that moment, every year, I have built an orphanage throughout the world. I now have 10 orphanages. I want you to think about everybody that makes money on me. General Motors, Toyota, Nissan, Ford, Chrysler, Kia, Hyundai, Capital One Bank, Allied Bank, you name them, Cox Automotive. They all donate to Giving Hope when I build these orphanages. Matter of fact, Capital One, Sanjay, who's from Hyderabad, India, we put the first orphanage in Hyderabad, India. He paid for the playground. 16 of those kids, I wrote a check last year to go to college in India. 2 of them got full scholarships. So you got to realize that when people are given an opportunity, regardless of their circumstances, where they're born and where they come from, they can achieve. The Women of Hope is the organization where we work with domestic violence women that have been abused sexually, physically. And it's really sad, some of the stories. And really, some of us would like to take a double-barrel shotgun and shoot people for what they do to some of these kids and women. We have a Giving Hope Community Center, which is an inner city community center. It actually runs VBS, after-school training, things like that. We serve God knows how many kids every summer. The cool thing about that, where that thing's located, that's like where Lil Wayne came from. So I got Lil Wayne, I got Master P, I got Baby, Slim, Cash Money. I got all these guys working with me to help these kids out. Because not every kid is going to be like I told MJ one time, not everybody's 6'6" with a 46-inch vertical jump. Not everybody can rap like Lil Wayne, but they can do something. And let's find out what that God-given gift is, and let's give them a chance. So in that particular program, we just started coding. What's amazing to me is watch an African-American male kid code. He's as good as any Asian I've ever seen. These kids are coding. They're not going to college. They're starting coding at $75,000 a year by the time they're 20 years old. Just amazing. The other thing we do is the compassion outreach and then the retreat center. The retreat center is a 60-acre drug rehabilitation center. So I spoke at a big conference many years ago, and I was working with the New Orleans Mission, and they asked me to go look at this facility. And it was the KBR ranch where they kept bad kids. And we went ahead and bought it. And we began to take the heroin addicts, the crack addicts, the people that really have no hope, where the court system says, you're gonna do 5 years jail, the kid's a heroin addict, he's got an addiction. Are you gonna go to Giving Hope? This program runs about 100 men a year, and the women's program runs about 40 women. We take the heroin addicts that nobody wants. Because once a person gets on heroin, ladies and gentlemen, there's only 2 choices left: jail or death. That's where it ends up. This program, and I'm proud to say this, #1 in the United States. It graduates 61% of heroin addicts. That is unbelievable. And you would say, Troy, how is that possible? When a person detox off heroin, they shake, and it's crazy to watch. They begin to foam. For about 2 days after that, they're normal. Their body begins to adjust before the addiction kicks back in from the brain cells. During those 2 days, we go to Susie, who's 25 years old. Susie, why do you do heroin? Mr. Troy, you don't understand it. Well, I want to know. Tell me. My stepdaddy beat me. My stepdaddy raped me. How can a 25-year-old girl, a 16-year-old girl deal with that? They suppress it. And they start with this. And then they start with this and this. And before you know it, it's this. Because she's never forgiven. So we require them to write a letter of forgiveness, which freaks them out. I can't forgive him. If you don't forgive him, you're going to die. Because you're going to trigger, something's going to trigger in your life. You're going to go back to heroin and your body's not going to handle it. The person's still alive, we escort her or him to and give the letter. If they're dead, we put it on the grave. You have to cut the cord. You got to let it go. And the beautiful thing is I've seen women who put that letter on the grave start crying for hours because they let it go. And for the first time, as long as they can remember, they felt free. I watch this. I get emotional because I've seen it. We take those people and we rename them. What you did is not who you are. What they did to you, you've now let it go. God has a plan and a purpose for you. Let us help you determine what that is. And then when we find out what their gift is, I bought 6 companies, landscaping, auto detailing, coding, and I put them to work. Here's the beautiful thing. I pay them, but they don't get paid till they graduate. So if they can stay clean for 1 year off of heroin and they got $25,000 waiting for them, that's a pot of gold, they got about a 61% chance of making it. That's kind of what we do. The last thing we do is this is kind of where the food banks are, okay? And then here's where all the orphanages are. So some of the greatest stories, it will blow your mind. Went to Russia. I don't think I ever want to go back. The minute I got off the plane, because I had been wiring money through JP Morgan Chase to pay for the facility, 7 Russian cop cars pulled me over. Shook me down like you wouldn't believe. Unbelievable. IRS audited me, and then they realized what I was doing, so they let it go. But you know what? If I wouldn't have did what I did, because see, Russia doesn't have an orphan problem. They have a bigger problem. They have a pedophile problem. Kids are being sold. Women, little girls are being sold. Some of the stuff that I've seen, it just blows your mind. And I do this because I have the love of people. See, when my dad was dying, and the hospice nurse called me and said, you need to get here quick. He's fading, and he's asking for you. Now, my dad was a good old used car guy. So I went in there, I'm thinking to myself, well, he's going to tell me where the safety deposit box is, where all the cash is, right? Guys, you know what I'm talking about. 60s and 70s, right? And he looks at me with tears coming down his cheeks, and he goes, son, don't you ever shut down that food bank. Nobody is going to remember how many cars you sold, but the good Lord's counting every time you feed his people. He put his arm out, the hospice nurse shot him with morphine, he never said another word. And that was the mantle that was put on me. See, selling cars may be what I do, but that's not who I am. That's who I am. I'm never going to retire. I'm never going to sell out. I've already told my partners, hey, when I die, you can buy it. But you're going to have to promise me that what you learned through giving hope, it continues and you pass it generationally. Pass it to your kids and your grandkids. One last story. So Larry Van Taal called me, and he would get mad at me if I tell you a story, but I don't care. So he calls me up. He's in negotiations with Berkshire. He goes, Troy, I want to know everything about giving hope. So I spent, 2 hours with him on the phone. He went back and modified his whole culture because he says, you're right. When our employees see that we're not just about selling cars, making money. Look, I could afford a Gulfstream. I tell my son all the time. He goes, Daddy, all your friends got a jet plane. I said, so do we. He goes, where's it at? I said, it leaves on the hour every hour. It's called Southwest. I said, Daddy ain't buying no plane. Daddy's going to keep building orphanages, and when Daddy dies, you're going to take the microphone at my funeral and say, my daddy fed millions of people. People that would never have bought a car from him. Them people ain't buying a car from me. He goes, Daddy, we have a nice boat. It's about 100 feet too short. I said, son, you know what I'm going to do. And that's what I do. It's the love of people. So it's a great conference. I love these guys. I've interviewed with them. They put me on the podcast. I want to challenge you. I don't care what you do at your dealership. I don't care what market you're in. I'm going to challenge you. What are you doing to make your community better? What is the need that your community has? What do people really want from you? And I'm going to tell you this, those Gen Zs that you're trying to hire and those millennials that you're trying to retain, when they see that in you, they'll never leave. You know how many mechanics have come to me and got offered $5,000, $7,500, signing bonuses? And I said, boss, my wife says I can't go nowhere because she knows what I do in that community. So I want to thank y'all for giving me the time to share about Giving Hope. But the true challenge when you leave this conference isn't how many more cars can you sell. It's how can you change the community where you do sell cars. And when you change that community, you will sell more cars. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Troy, what is the slogan of Giving Hope?
Where love changes everything.
And that is the perfect setup to our conclusion. That, my friends, is how barbecue can change the world, because love can. And that's what I like about barbecue. Not that it makes me a better cook, but that it makes me a better man. Now, who's hungry?
Let's eat.